and imagine with me a world without touch. A world where you never have to worry about people bumping into you on the sidewalk or stepping on your toes. A world where your great aunts don't force you to give Auntie a big kiss every time the family gets together. Doesn't that sound amazing? Never having to worry about your personal space being invaded. Well, unfortunately for those of us who prefer to avoid rubbing elbows with the common folk on the street, a world without touch would actually be pretty awful. Studies done by leading universities all over the world have shown that without physical contact, human beings would be worse off than you think. Dr. Ruth Feldman, a professor of psychology and neuroscience at Bar-Ilan University, conducted a study more than 10 years ago to understand the effects of physical contact with premature infants. Her team ran a series of tests, first in 1996 and again in 1998, in 2 separate hospitals. In these tests, one group of premature infants in each hospital was handled for an extra hour every day, merely held, bounced around by the nurses, while the other subjects weren't. They were handled with their standard care and put back in their cribs. In follow-up examinations done over the next 7 years, it was found that the infants that had been held were both mentally and physically stronger than their isolated counterparts. They showed that they were both mentally and physically acuter, that the infants that were held were able to sleep through the night and were able to solve more complex problems than the infants that weren't held. This shows how important physical contact is on the developing human brain. Now, the research done by Feldman's team and the changes brought around by it have changed the world forever, giving these infants that start life prematurely with a lower rate of success and survival a better chance at reaching the same heights as their not premature counterparts. Now, the science backs it up. Physical contact is good for infants, but what about as adults? Is it really necessary? Well, a study done by the University of California, Berkeley says, yes, it is. You see, some of the students were curious to see how well people could communicate by physical contact when they didn't have access to body language or vision or even voice, our normal method of communication. 100 volunteers were gathered and were asked to convey emotion through a simple touch. Just one touch on the arm through a wall so that you couldn't see or hear your assistant. The students estimated that their volunteers would be able to accurately guess the emotion conveyed about 8% of the time, which was statistically probable. It was actually found that their volunteers could guess the emotion correctly over 60% of the time, proving without a shadow of a doubt that physical contact is the unsung hero of communication. And beyond communication, physical contact has even more benefits. See, physical contact activates the hypothalamus in the brain, releasing serotonin, the love hormone. This love hormone actually creates bonds between people, increasing feelings of friendship and camaraderie, and providing a small boost to your immune system, and on top of that, fighting anxiety and depression. So why does any of this matter? We're perfectly fine as we are. We're a functioning society. We all work, and we all play, and we all have friends. So why does physical contact even really matter? Well, it comes down to a societal problem. You see, if you look back through history, you look at photographs, you look at letters, people weren't always this isolated as we are nowadays. See, compared to other countries, other ways of life, Americans are incredibly isolated. We prefer not to touch people, which, hey, that's perfectly fine with me. But this physical contact is actually creating rifts in between people. See, as I pointed out earlier, physical contact is important for communication. Physical contact makes you happier. It makes you healthier. So, why are we so afraid to do it? I don't know. Nobody really knows. As I scoured the internet and scoured the library looking for answers to this question, nobody knows why Americans don't like touching each other. We just don't. And on top of that, we just don't touch. So it comes down to this. Maybe to make a more functioning society, one with less arguments, with less wars, with less miscommunication, we have to break down the barriers that have been ingrained into our mind, whether by choice or just by the way we were raised. We need to make the choice actively to be more in touch, pardon the joke, with our fellow man. Why don't we start holding hands with our friends when we're hanging out, walking down the street? Why don't we hug our parents more? Why don't we engage in a rowdy game of football to get our blood pressure rising and start tackling people more, right? As Michelangelo said, to touch is to give life. So let us start giving life back to the people in our lives that matter. Be it a hug, a high five, or whatever works best for you. Let's get more in touch with each other. Thank you.